So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today, David will talk about, he's going to talk about unlocking Revizto benefits for designers. I'll be his co-host. My name is Stephanie Guzman. I'm the marketing coordinator for the Americas here at Revizto. So David, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about a little bit of the housekeeping. The webinar is being recorded and the link will be sent tomorrow in the follow-up email to all registrants. Please use the chat to engage with David and I and other attendees. Also, there is a Q&A box here in Zoom. Please add your questions there. David will be answering them at the end. Also, please keep an eye out on the polls and participate live. And also to keep up with future webinars here at Revizto, please follow us on LinkedIn. Now I'm going to present David Ray, our Revizto host. He's a design and architecture implementation manager here at Revizto. David has 20 years of extensive experience in construction and architecture, including all aspects of design from concept to closeout, and specializes in model visualization and rendering. He also has a master's in architecture and over a decade working as a project manager at various architecture firms. He now brings his real-life experience to the table to help firms better maximize tools like Revizto. Awesome. So before we start, David, we can go to the next slide. I'm going to launch a poll. Just give me one moment. Awesome. All right, so David and I would love to know if you have used Revizto for design review before. We have answers like, yes, I have used Revizto for design review. No, I have not used Revizto for design review. We also have no, but my team uses Revizto for design review. And lastly, this would be your first time knowing or seeing Revizto for the first time. Awesome, so we're getting answers. Perfect. So it looks like it's tied. Let me share the results so everyone can see. Seems like we have people who have used Revizto for design review and some that haven't. So awesome, this is great. So David, I will pass it on to you.
Wonderful, thank you, Stephanie. Okay, so I'll start with a couple of slides just here on the front end. Let me adjust the screen real quick. But yeah, some of the professionals who rely on Revizto, right? We have a lot of our clients comprised of architects, engineers, general contractors, owners, reps. Revizto is super simplistic BIM software, right? Everything's, cloud hosted. Our philosophy is to keep things very, 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 one-click oriented and super simple as you coordinate a project. So very multifaceted tool used in a lot of different scenarios. One of which happens to be design review. So we'll focus mostly on that today. But yeah, really with a kind of wide array of people that come into Revizto with various workflows. One that I'll touch on too recently, we've seen an uptick on is being able to go through facilities management with Revizto and the issue tracker. So being able to, kind of pass on that as-built model onto the facilities management team. So yeah, the graphic just really depicts, how we can bring all these different disciplines together in one, single environment in Revizto. And then, yeah, I guess one of my favorite things about Revizto, it does a really awesome job at bringing together the construction documents, the BIM model. If you do need to contend with existing conditions, so scan files and point clouds, bring all those together. And then the one at the bottom, I think most important, communication. So being able to view the BIM model, view the construction documents, both handles it in a really unique way, and we'll go through that today. But yeah, being able to communicate around all of that data, I think is Revizto's strong suit, if you will. And then some of the workflows that we cater towards. So to the right, design, construction, facilities management, right? And those aren't segregated, right? We kind of bundle those up, and we can have designers and general contractors, and then eventually, the FM teams, all in that, single collaboration platform. And then again, brings the project data together, I think, in a really meaningful manner. So the graphical data, 2D, 3D comes together in Revizto. If you do need, kind of a common data environment, it does that as well. And then, the issue tracker is kind of set up to be, viewed on a issue by issue basis. But if you need to reach in and gather analytics on a more holistic manner, we can pull together charts and dashboards and extract issues and clash reports if you do need to generate any type of external report, for example. Accessibility, super versatile software. I'll say it again just because, right? So an immersive cave, we can set Revizto up to be, excuse me, viewed in kind of an igloo VR environment, if you will. Fully functional on a workstation or laptop. And then we've had the tablet app for quite a while now, but also more recently, you can access Revizto on a mobile device as well, both with or without a Wi-Fi connection. And then it really becomes that, single source of project coordination. So issue tracking, we need to store information. And then I think, the main intent for Revizto would be coordinating along those different aspects. So as for the agenda, so we're going to talk mostly about design review with Revizto. We're going to take a really deep dive into some of the tool sets to conduct some of those reviews. I'll talk a lot about markup organization, and also we'll end on kind of a 3D coordination view. I won't get, super intricate or fancy with that, but there's one that I get enough questions about I did want to include in a webinar today. And yeah, some of the tool sets, I mean, kind of bear with us as we go through these. Some of them may be a little bit obvious, and others, it's funny, we'll get into a meeting with a group or, a firm we work with, right? And we just kind of casually show a feature here and there, and their jaws drop, right? They're like, well, why aren't we using that? And it's like, well, we've had this for a while. So I thought it'd be a good time to kind of go back, take a step back into the 2D workspace and share some of those features. Okay. And to be honest, there's really no technical significance to this slide. I just wanted to add a little humor here and kind of share how I came up with the idea for this webinar. So I think lately, we've kind of been inundated with the 3D aspects of Revizto, right? So the 3D capabilities, when we released the native Clash tools to Revizto, we promoted that quite heavily, and the 2D was kind of looked at as a way to support 3D. But yeah, I think Revizto is still pretty instrumental in design review, and maybe we'll look at it today in the sense of, well, let's coordinate on the 2D and look at the 3D as a way to support those efforts. So yeah, I really wanted to bring kind of those 2D workflows back to the forefront. It's something we've been talking a lot internally about, updating some of the feature sets, making it, maybe more conducive to ISO 19650 and those types of review mechanisms. And yeah, the other thing I wanted to share today, so this really became apparent with yeah, it was a recent trip to New York, right? We go out there with one of the I was with one of the account executives, and we learned that one of the firms out there had used Revizto with a general contractor. So we made it a point to visit the office and wanted to learn, what was your experience, and did you feel like Revizto is a good fit for your firm? And yeah, it was funny. We showed one of the drawings, and I think it was just something simple as like a revision cloud on the sheet. and the principal architect kind of dropped his pen on the conference room table, right? And it was just this moment of, wait a minute, I could have been marking up sheets this whole time. So he explained that, it was mostly used for clash coordination. So anyway, I thought it'd be good chance to, talk about 2D a little bit today. All right, so I'll go through just some core concepts as it relates to the issue tracker. So issue fundamentals, right? So issues could be, as it relates to Revizto, could be clashes. They could be just general review comments as you're interrogating the 3D model. But issues could also be markups, right, from a 2D review standpoint. So we'll take a look at the different ways to use those. Filtering, right? I mentioned kind of the different ways we use issues. So pretty critical to be able to filter for those in the issue tracker and get to a pointed list of markups or comments that you need to address or kind of review. And then the chat window. So that's another pretty instrumental or core aspect of the issue tracker. So being able to mark something up, but then get a dialogue back and forth and hopefully arrive at a good design decision. So some takeaways for today. We'll look at some efficient ways to identify mistakes and risk areas with Revizto issues. So we'll go in. That'll be a pretty in-depth part of this conversation, and then look a little bit deeper into maybe some QA/QC strategies as it relates to that workflow. And then we'll take an even deeper dive as it relates to some of the tools we have for reviewers. And one of my favorite use cases is how to set Revizto up on maybe a phase-based review. Okay, so I'm gonna turn my camera off as we go into some of these. I just find it a little bit distracting, but we'll start at design review techniques and strategies. So some of the issue tracker setup aspects, right? We typically see stamps used as part of those review efforts. Stamps can pretty versatile in Revizto. You can use them for clash detection. You can also use those for marking up sheets. And the two main ways I see the issue tracker set up or the stamps templated is from an external standpoint. So if you're marking up drawing sets and maybe you're in design development or deep into construction documenting, you might want to set the stamps up to where, they're pointed more external to your team. So if you're bringing your consulting engineers into the cloud-hosted Revizto environment, it kind of makes sense to set this up to where, we can assign issues out to structural, mechanical, electrical, et cetera, but also internally as well. So we can sort of coordinate with our team. Two main ways I see the setup kind of unfold. So my philosophy with stamps is keep these as simple as you can. I've certainly seen some projects where, maybe there was some lessons learned, where they're setting up the issue tracker and they're trying to, capture every master format spec number with their stamp templates, and it just gets it gets a little bit unwieldy. So I always recommend keep stamps simple. These are very user-defined if you're making comments to a project manager, or project architect, or designer. And then you can utilize the tags as kind of that subcategory to filter for. And something that I kind of relate to, maybe it's just how my brain works or because I come from architecture, but on that, sort of phase basis, if you need a tool to go through a review and capture everything you want to comment on in schematic design, design development, construction documenting, the tags sort of become that subcategory to filter for outside of the stamp, right? So we can set up one stamp, comments to project manager, just make it super simple, utilize the tags for that subcategory to filter for, And then when we get into the issue tracker, I'll show more on this on some of the filtering mechanisms and how that really, is instrumental as part of that review process. So again, I think I mentioned this, but I'm not trying to be prescriptive here. You can set these up however you like. They're very much user defined, but just something I think we can all relate to. And an example I thought was helpful. I'll kind of use that throughout this presentation. Okay, and then yeah, kind of more on tags. So as we set up our stamps, I'll use my internal coordination example here. So comments to the designer on the project. So that's where I would want to probably put in my milestone tag, and that way I would be able to filter out the issue tracker based on those various phases that come up. So very much templatable attributes. This is where I'm templating out into my stamps the issue types, the assignee, making sure it's going to the correct person, priority, deadline, and then the customizable aspect here would be the tag. Something else I wanted to touch on as it relates to design review. So custom statuses in Revizto, something that it's kind of newer upon the 5.14 release. But yeah, we can, develop various issue workflows. And it kind of shows the versatility and kind of variety of reviews we can conduct when using Revizto. So these are intended to be set up and sort of curated to each workflow. So the screen over here is of the web workspace. So if we set it up within the web, and it makes it really easy to push that into the various projects we're working on. So the couple examples I put together here. So you might have one that's more specific to clash detection if you do need to run clash on your project. And then a QA, QC review, which I'll use as an example as we go through things. Let's see. So yeah, organizing markups as it relates to design review. So as previously mentioned, we might have clash issues coming into the issue tracker, right? We might have just generic issue pins that come in. And we might have, a variety of stamps that are feeding into the issue tracker. So with a little bit of strategy on the front end, we mentioned, stamps, tags, etc. You can organize this and also from a, markup standpoint as well. And I kind of show that as we go on as well. But yeah, this can get pretty unwieldy pretty quick. I've seen the issue list on some projects go into the thousands. So being able to filter this down, not only from an issue standpoint, but also kind of controlling what markups I'm seeing on the drawings as well. So I'll go back to my favorite example here. So setting up stamps on a milestone basis. So again, keeping stamps simple, but kind of using those tags to filter for as the project progresses. So the issue tracker comes equipped with the various way to filter for things. One of my favorite, right, is by tag, and then being able to customize those per review, per milestone. So having, a couple examples I have here is schematic design 50%, design development 50%. But yeah, those, again, user defined. So if you observe maybe a 30% milestone or deliverable and want to use Revizto to mark things up as, quality control before it gets sent out. And then once you save that filter, it goes into a preset list. So we can go, back to those at any time and filter that out. All right, so next we'll talk about some of the tools and features, and this will be part of the kind of deeper dive portion of the webinar here. Some, I kind of mentioned this at the beginning. Some are pretty obvious, and I don't mean to bore you guys, but some I think the way we set them up may be a little bit lesser known. So hopefully, some of these tools will help you guys out if you did want to use Revizto for design review. Uh-oh.
No worries, David. Maybe it'll be better if you can stop sharing your screen and maybe share the screen from your other monitor. Sorry, guys, we have a little bit of technical difficulties.
Yeah, that's strange. Let me try that.
Oh, there we go.
Nice. Okay, cool. Sorry about that, everyone. So stamps, copy, and paste. Sounds super simple, but I think our development team did a really good job of making this a super functional tool. So I'll show a quick example here of where, maybe in a washroom space, I drop a stamp. I'm going to get that out of the way there, and then grab my annotation tools. So the comment here is maybe I need a interior elevation here at this restroom space. So I draw my call out markup. That's going to go over to my designer on the project. And once I complete that, so I'll go up and hit done. And then back at the top of my stamp template tools, there's a temporary stamp feature. So you'll notice up there at the top, it sort of puts it into its own category. And then that makes it to where I can drop another stamp and the annotations come with it, right? So I'm going to move my stamp out of the way, kind of adjust where my elevation call out is. Excuse me. And then I can keep going, right? If I need an interior elevation, excuse me, here at this kitchenette, I can drop that in. So pretty versatile in the sense that not only can I do that on this sheet, right, but I can go back out to my sheet gallery, for instance, and switch up my drawing set. And maybe I notice on my other floor plan here, we do need some elevation references. So I can grab my temporary stamp again, place that on the sheet, and that's going to bring the call out with it. The other way we've done this is if I, for example, have a comment for my project manager, right? So I grab that stamp, I'm going to place it here on the sheet, grab my annotation tools, and excuse me, just a quick example of a markup. So grab a call out. I'm going to say maybe we need furring detail here. I'll hit done, grab another, grab some more line work here, grab the rectangle tool, make sure I'm specifically calling that out where we need that detail added. And then with a Control C, Control V, I can grab that line work. And excuse me, before I did that, I held Control and was able to copy all of that. And then with a Control C, Control V, I can drop that into my next column. My leader gave me a little trouble there, but yeah, I can keep going. I can Control V that again, Control V that one more time. And yeah, hopefully that helps you guys out if you do use Revizto currently for design review, just being a little more efficient with your day-to-day. All right, so next one we'll talk about sheet compare. This one maybe is a little more on the obvious side, but the thing I want to point out here is that not only we can compare past versions of drawing iterations as the new versions come into Revizto, the drawing set updates, and then we can utilize the compare feature to see where those changes have occurred. And yeah, as part of a design review process, you want to make sure that things are corrected, right, as you go through. So there's a kind of slider bar for compare. You can have each sheet active and flip between the two, not only on a single sheet with past versions, but also, if I wanted to compare a third floor to fourth floor, right, or other discipline drawings for that matter, you could compare, architecture to structural or mechanical, and keep going that way. So what I really like about this tool is with the compare activated, keep in mind your issue tools are going to work with it. So I can go back into my slider there, grab my stamp tool, and maybe I need my designer to take another look at something, right? So I can grab my stamp, I can mark it up. I think I used like a vision cloud here. So I go in, add my annotation, hit done. And then I'll go into the issue tracker and show that, the person on the receiving end of that markup is going to automatically have this compare feature activated. So they can see the comment made, use the compare feature to verify things. And again, hopefully that, adds a little bit of efficiency for you guys. Sorry, everyone. I think I have this open on 2 screens, so it's giving me trouble here. Okay, issue filters and markup control. This one I personally love about the issue tracker. So it kind of relates back to the beginning of the presentation where I talked about utilizing tags and stamps to kind of control the markup visibility in the issue tracker. So we'll look at, how to go in. This example, I wanted to share with everyone that, tags can be applied at that category level, right? So the internal comments I'm making, if I switch up from schematic design to design development, any stamp within that category is going to carry that tag, right? And that way, when I go through my drawing review, maybe I'm making comments to my project manager, and apparently I love marking up columns. I'm going to do that one more time. Awesome. So here, here I think is a really good example of how, maybe I did make some markups for schematic design, moved on to design development, and I can pretty clearly, filter for each one of those reviews, right? Revizto is intended to be this one session environment that's continuously updated as the project progresses. So we sort of want a way to filter out past markups. We always want a way to go back to those, but as we move on to the next phase, we want to kind of, control those. So you can see if I filter for schematic design, switch over to design development, you'll see the markups start to change. There's also a transparency slider at the bottom. I wanted to point that out for everyone. So that gives you kind of a clear indication of which issue you're viewing in the project. But if I go back to the issue tracker, I go back to my schematic design phase, you'll see the markups do adjust and change as I go on. Okay, switch back to Revit. I'm going to use Revit in this example, but just know conceptually we're a plugin to various authoring softwares. So I show this in 2 ways. I think we're all familiar with the switch back to Revit from a 3D standpoint. So I'm going to generate a section box here, use this as my switchback example. But the plugin to Revit allows you to talk to the Revizto model. So right from the 3D environment, right, it can switch back to Revit. Excuse me, it's going to open up a Revizto isometric view. The intent there is to kind of go through clash resolution in a project. So the clashes are going to automatically section off for you. You can go right from the issue tracker 3D back into Revit, make some adjustments, right? Get the model ready for its next update. I think one of the lesser known or lesser used features, though, is for, a 2D switchback. And that is Gravedigger. Sorry, everyone. But I'll find an issue here. It's a 2D originated comment that I made. And I can utilize the switchback from a 2D standpoint as well. It really just opens up the sheet for me in Revit as I apply that switchback. So what I did in the issue tracker is double clicked on that issue. So if it's a really large project, sometimes the the browser organization in Revit gets a little bit, unwieldy. So hopefully that helps you guys out. And then that is bi-directional. I wanted to point that out as well. It's something in the plugin, so we can go right from Revit into Revizto with the new issue button. And it went a little fast there. Let me back up. But this button here, I can generate a new issue from Revit, right? Grab my stamp in Revizto, place it on that, problematic or conflicting area, and then generate a markup that way as well. Okay, next one is slip sheeting. So in my opinion, Revizto is, this feature in Revizto is really unmatched and super powerful as it relates to design review. Excuse me. This example, I'm going to show just really quick how to generate a dimension. So I noticed that maybe we have some accessible restrooms in this project, and we have to comply with certain clearances in that aspect of design. So I place a stamp, dimension that out, created a dimension-based issue that's assigned out to my designer. Another thing I wanted to share here, if I need to reference something out of the maybe ANSI 117, the issue tracker also accepts screenshots. So I can pull open my screenshot tool, grab a screenshot. I think I actually made a mistake here. We needed hinge approach push side. So I go ahead and do a new screenshot really quick. And then right into my issue chat, I can copy and go back into Revizto, and I can Control V that right into the comment field. It's pretty nice. It takes me right into my annotation tools. I can grab my pen and say, let's double check that corridor width for that 42-inch minimum distance there. So I paste that in. So not only does my designer receive a comment with a dimension, but also a markup with a screenshot, right? That references that code requirement we may need to adhere with. So from there, this is where the slip sheeting, I think, is super powerful. So I can go back into the plugin, update. I'm going to update just that drawing just to kind of show this feature. Right, I publish that sheet into Revizto. It's going to slip sheet the new drawing, the newly revised drawing, into the 2D workspace. And we can see I made some adjustments there. The markup stays exactly where I originated it at. And then we can see the updated line work come through, right? So on the maybe QA, QC person end, he can go back in if you need to back check that and just double check our dimension there and say, okay, yeah, we were over our 42-inch minimum, right? Let's get that ready for a QA, QC check. Awesome. So yeah, a little bit on slip sheeting. 2D, 3D overlay annotations. This is another one I think pretty awesome that Revizto does. So just from a sense of how it handles the 2D to 3D and vice versa, right? Any stamp I'm placing, I can sort of visualize that from 2D to 3D, from 3D to 2D. And this is just a quick example of how I can utilize the overlay to, from 2D into the 3D, and then also apply a markup as we visualize that. So I think this is one, I think a couple webinars, if you guys watched the one with Rossetti, right, Dan Wells pointed this out. He really likes to use this in client meetings. And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, us as designers, we're so used to looking at drawings all day long. We produce drawings. But not everybody is super comfortable looking at 2D line work and knowing what that's going to look like in 3D. So if we have this pulled open in a meeting, or even if it makes sense just to mark something up and very clearly communicate that to the person on the, again, the receiving end of that issue. So I'll just show a couple of, this might be a bad example. I probably could have communicated this just as easy on a sheet. However, yeah, just wanted to throw this out as an example. So kind of dimensioning out, again, code requirements for stairs. We might need a nose minimum dimension, rise and run as well. So we'll go ahead and mark those up. So I'll generate my issue from there. And then I wanted to show just one last example. Basically, any live view from Revit into Revizto will carry that overlay functionality. So if I go up here, keep in mind, like maybe I'm in a scenario where I'm talking to an owner or somebody that needs more context behind just the line work, right? If I overlay a section, kind of utilize my section depth tool there, right? Just really, really clearly tells the story as we go through that conversation. Okay, past sheet version compare. So this is one in Revizto, pretty powerful. But say, for example, I update the drawing set 30 times in Revizto. And maybe I'm not using the sheet compare at every markup, right? So I can see, what does that look like in 2D? I can also, in the issue tracker, I can see where does that issue pin reside in, in the 3D standpoint. And the version history here, this is kind of a sandbox example project, but sometimes that will, grow pretty lengthy, right? We see, 50 versions in there. So the AB icon allows me to apply a sheet compare, and it's specific to when that markup was generated. So I can see from version 1 to the latest version, what that looked like originally when I created the markup. What does it look like now? It looks like I added my call out for a furring detail. And we can, clearly see that in the issue tracker. So I think pretty helpful, if you do want to set up the issue tracker for sort of that QA, QC review. I'll go back here briefly to my restroom example and show kind of the same functionality where we have a slider of what was the drawing when we marked it up, what does it look like now? And that's where we can, end the life cycle of that markup or issue. Okay, so looking closer at, kind of the QA QC setup, if you did want to use Revizto again from a design review standpoint. So everybody invited into the project has a permission level. We can be specific on who can close issues or who can mark those issues completed. So there's a permission setting specific to editing issue statuses except for completing. So we want to tick that on. I think I left it off in this example, but that's where we can go in and save this as a new role. Maybe it is, titled QA, QC, right? We have that permission level setting turned on. Let me get through my example here. So save as new role. I'm just going to cancel out of that. I just wanted to show where that setting existed. But that way in the issue tracker, you're probably instructing the team to mark everything, open in progress all the way up to solved in a standard issue. The clash detection example, I just have clashing and closed here as a brief example. If I go into my QA QC review, right? That's where we can say, okay, this is out for review. Maybe we need to put it on hold. Or, eventually we'll see the drawings update and we want to mark those ready for QA QC review. So that allows my reviewer to come into the issue tracker. Maybe he applies a filter to the issue tracker specific to that status. So we can go in, I think it was back up at the top, and filter specifically for that status. So we'll get into our statuses here, filter the issue tracker down. Looks like 4 issues or 4 markups are ready for that review. And that just gives them a really concise list for them to go back and say, okay, some of these issues are taken care of, or it can also go the other way. And you might need to start that review life cycle over once more. Awesome. So yeah, I wanted to run through those tools, more in depth than we, I think, normally would. Next up, I'll do one 3D coordination view, just showing kind of some view techniques. This one I get questions on quite often. I think warrants shout out in a webinar, and it's really really specific to Revit phases, right? So, and maybe this is a residual from Revizto 4, where some of those views, phase-based views from Revit into Revizto came in automatically. Just wanted to show a quick example of how that can be set up in Revizto and how it can aid that design review process. So out of Revit, we have phase filters and we have phases. So I typically set up a 3D view where I'm showing a phase filter of none, right? I want everything to show. So I'll switch that up here, I think, in a minute. But basically the intent there is we're setting up the 3D view. Basically what's visible in that view dictates what comes into Revizto. So we hit apply there. We basically want everything turned on. I typically recommend going to that last phase in Revit because they're sort of timeline based, right? One phase can't happen before the other. I basically use the default 3D view after I set up my phases, publish that into Revizto. And then if I run a show all, I kind of have a home viewpoint set up where the existing conditions are hidden, but running a show all, we can see, okay, the existing conditions out of Revit came into Revizto, and that's where I can start to develop my 3D coordination view. So we can get into our parameters here, phase created, for example, find objects. And then we can go through the various phases that came in, run a find all, so we can look at, okay, what's new construction, what's existing construction, and then, again, legends happens to be a phase in that project. So I can save all of those phases as separate search sets. So out of the find objects, I'm going to go into kind of a search set phasing folder example. And then with those set up, we can kind of test our theory here. So it looks like those are all working appropriately. And then from there, I can get into my appearance profiler. So I can, add a rule based on those search sets and start to develop that 3D view. So I'm going to do kind of a crazy example to start with, but we'll scale that back into something more realistic. So my new construction phase, right? I want to color that, and then I want to set up a transparency level, hit apply. And then if I add another rule based on my search set, so we can start to layer in the existing phase. Kind of same thing, add a contrasting color. And then we'll go ahead and duplicate and add some transparency as well. Right, hit apply, and then from there I can save that off as an appearance template. So we'll go back into the appearance profiler tool, save that off as a template, and then we'll look at how to utilize those for reviews. Awesome. And then, yeah, with that set up, I can basically go in, adjust my view as needed. This one's a little more realistic, where maybe we're showing the construction to be demoed in a red, kind of transparent manner that makes a little more sense. I go a little bit further with this one. I go back into 2D and show kind of the overlay. And, if we're reviewing drawing sets and looking at demo plans, I think this is pretty helpful if you need to just verify, okay, what walls are we noting that need to be taken out, or maybe there's some things that we need to detail right as part of that demo work. And then I'll switch it over to the demo shown. I think this is maybe the better example, but yeah, we can pretty clearly see which walls we're, what of the construction we're removing, what needs to be added as new construction. And with that overlay, I think it's, yeah, pretty powerful. Yeah, I'll just do one more quick example. With my appearance template applied, and wake up, Stephanie. With the phase filter activated. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you, David. That was awesome. So for our last poll, we want to know if you want to know more about what you heard today. So please, before we go into the Q&A, we would love to know. Perfect. And David, while we can go to the next slide, can go into the Q&A. All right. So if you have any questions, please add it in the Q&A box here on Zoom. But while we wait, David, as yourself, as an architect, what are your favorite features for design review in Revizto?
Yeah, I think going back to some of the examples, I think the slip sheeting use case is super helpful. Again, I don't think there's another software that I've seen that does it as well as Revizto. So being able to slip sheet the new drawings in, verify that the markup's been taken care of as the project goes on, I would say that's pretty high up on my list.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Okay, so we got a question. How have you found using this tool with other disciplines who don't use Revizto?
Yeah, so something maybe I didn't share today specifically, but keep in mind that we do have an output of PDF from the 2D workspace. So if you mark up a set, and you need to get that externally to maybe somebody that doesn't have Revizto, or you're not able to invite them into the project, could be a way to, get a marked up sheet out to your design consultant for, review.
Thank you. We got another question from Elena. What strategy do you recommend for keeping milestones, PDFs, drawings on Revizto through tags, separate files, etc.?
Yeah, so that's something we've been talking a lot about internally, updating the 2D workspace to, I think, better accommodate that. I think, yeah, tags in the 2D workspace, for sure. Like you can tag sheets, or, if you need to bring in just a set of PDFs to then, kind of filter back through. So yeah, absolutely. Separate folders for sure. Tagging drawings, I think is helpful. And then Revizto, each time it updates, it does log a different version. So you can go back and pull that open. You can view the past version if you'd ever like. But yeah, that is something you'll see updates on very, very soon.
Thank you. We have another question. As an owner, please overview how outside users are incorporated into external reviews and how/what level of hosting or licensing is managed.
Let's see. Overview how outside users are incorporated to external reviews. Let's see. I guess as part of the review setup, so we have a public-private sharing mechanism. So if maybe the architect needs to gather feedback from the owner, we could be, very specific on how we're communicating that. Let's see what level of hosting licensing is managed. So the the intent for Revizto is that the whole project team comes together for coordination. So we have licensing or hosting models that it can be basically purchased for the whole project, right? So the intent there, again, the owner, the GC, and all the design professionals would come together for, those types of reviews. So I hope that helps. If you have a follow-up comment, please let us know.
Sounds good. Also, we have another question. How much of what we saw today can be done on a Mac?
On a Mac, yeah, good question. Well, basically all of it except for the export functionality. So you can utilize Revizto fully on a Mac. Aside from, we went into like slip sheeting, you would kind of need a Windows-based machine for that. So we do have firms and offices, they're Mac based, and they'll have a Windows machine to run a lot of the updates. So you really only need one to update the project, and then that's cloud shared, cloud hosted as those updates come through. So yeah, good question.
Thank you, David. Also, we have another person asking if we if they can expect spec book support anytime soon.
So yeah, another good question. The 2D workspace in Revizto, and I think maybe that's where the question comes from. It's intended to be kind of set up on a sheet by sheet viewing basis. So multi-page PDF. So like, let's see. Yeah, multi-page PDFs such as specs or submittals. Sometimes, yeah, aren't as interactive as the drawings, I guess I'm alluding to. We do have the docs integration. So if those are housed in maybe, ACC, Procore, Box, SharePoint, something like that, we could sort of work with those together with, through one of the integrations. But yeah, hopefully in the near future, we can accommodate those multi-page PDFs for that, specific type of review.
Thank you, David. And the last question we're going to answer is a follow-up question from Elena. She's asking, do the tags get assigned to the sheet or a specific version?
So they're assigned to a sheet that is updated. And then the version, you'd have to go back and kind of know which version you're looking at. Hopefully what we shared today helps accommodate that, like the ability in the issue tracker to mark up a sheet that's maybe it was 10 versions back by the time you're reviewing it. And with some of the compare functionality, you can see, okay, that sheet was at this state at that point in time. Now it is in the updated state, and you can kind of move through it that way. But yeah, good question. That's another one I think pretty high up on the development list that we're gonna change pretty soon.
All right, thank you everyone for your questions. Now we can go to the final slide. So you see David's contact information. If you want to know more, you can email him or follow him on LinkedIn as well. And thank you, David, and thank you everyone for joining